Over sex, you know him. Once said to me, once we were supposed, I'm going back to your childhood for a while. Once we were supposed to live in an archaic state, our childhood. And the rest of our lives we are busy recapturing that Arcadia, although perhaps it never existed. Does that apply to you, more or less?
Well, I was very fortunate.
We're talking about purity now, in childhood.
I was very fortunate in having an unhappy childhood, so that my desire from the very beginning was to escape from it. So I never actually had that sense of Arcadia. My childhood home was one of violence and quarrels and discord, and perhaps, of course, this has given me an underlying sense that there was something missing and I must recreate it. But always from the beginning of my life I was aware that I had to create this consolation for myself. There was nothing to go back to. It wasn't there in my childhood.
Not at all.
Well, it was pretty well destroyed anyway. I'm sure there was at some stage and some remove, but it wasn't something which I felt to be reliable. I had no sense that I could simply give up, turn back from the adult world and rediscover that soothing air of mother love that so many people of my generation used to know. I knew that
you didn't know it.
Well, it was anxiety.
Only as a desire.
Of course, there were. It was there. It was planted in me because my mother loved me, but her life was very difficult. The home was very difficult. There was immense conflict, and I ran away from it when I was 16. As soon as I could, as soon as I'd finished school.
Conflicts about what?
Well, just sort of things that parents conflict about. It was nothing relevant to me now, but it meant that I went out quite anxious into the world, but nevertheless thinking that there's nothing that good that can happen to me except by me going on and making it happen out of my own energy. And I knew, however, that because I was not stupid, I knew that any idea of consolation that we have must relate also to the deep feelings in us, the deep desire for homecoming. So from the beginning I was in the business of making a home, which would be my doing. But at the same time I was very much aware of the difference between me and everybody else. Not everybody, but most of the people I met. That there was something in me that was in need of there was something in me that needed to be addressed. If you like, I had a question in my life. I didn't know what the question was, but I knew that it needed an answer, and I had first to identify what the question was. And so the things that my contemporaries took pleasure in, like football or cinema or whatever it might be, pop music, had very little significance for me. Even though, like all my contemporaries, of course I played the guitar and played bass guitar in a pop group and all the usual things one had to do. But even while doing it, I regarded myself as just as ridiculous as the people around me.
You had a question, but you didn't know.
So I didn't know what it was.
What kind of?
No, I didn't know what it was. But someone like Heidegger would say it was the question of being. What and why am I? And I suppose that is part of it. It gradually became more concrete, and indeed it really was the question of what is this soul doing in this environment, and how can it possibly come to be in that environment in a way that will bring peace to itself. That was the question. What I now realise is that I was beginning to live in a questioning mode. You know? There was no one question, but that everything was going to be, for me, a question. And I would eventually need something like a philosophy which would enable me to understand the difference between living well in this world and living badly. And that's what I suppose all my efforts as a writer have been devoted to the attempt to describe what this difference is.